Hey guys, welcome back to the Brick House. Brik here with another Pokemon Unite solo queue tier list. So, we got in front of us week 6 of the Breath of Evolution solo queue tier list, and as you may notice, just like last week, I have the Pokemon that I don't believe have moved up or down on the board currently displayed. So, it's been an interesting week. Obviously, their ranked season has been coming to a close, so you've been seeing a lot more specific Pokemon be kind of meta heavy, and I believe there's like 2 more days as of recording this video for season 31, so we're going to be going into a new season next week, and we're going to kind of see how the player base kind of shifts, or how the meta kind of shifts, since now it's going to be the beginning of a season as opposed to the end of a season, so be interesting to see how that works. Anyways, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so the first one up is the attacker Gardevoir. So I was a bit brutal to Gardevoir last week. So last week we put Gardevoir all the way down in the maybe don't play tier, and on a little bit of reflection, perhaps that was a bit too harsh on Gardevoir. Perhaps a little bit too harsh, so I'm going to be moving Gardevoir up to the not bad tier again. I think there is something to be said about getting that Unite move off in the team fight. When just like comparing long range attackers, you have Mons like Miraidon, even Raichu kind of come to mind with their range that will just get a lot more work done than a Gardevoir. Being said, Gardevoir is really good at the Rayquaza fight. If you do have your Unite move and you do end up getting like 3 Pokemon in that, you might as well call the game right there. There's been a lot of games that can just end because of the black hole. So, something you always got to keep an eye out when you're playing against a Gardevoir, and I think just having that respect makes it something that's not bad, but definitely not a solid pick, I would say. Last week I had actually in the not bad, and honestly I've been really impressed by Glaceon these past couple days. Icicle Spear is shredding opponents like nothing right now. There's a couple Glaceon builds you can go like, you know, the Curse Incense if you want if there's like a lot of supports on the other team. You got Wise Glasses if you want to play it safe. Assault Bracer, even the Drive Lens to stack up. It's actually not too hard to get some of these early KOs and then just start just dominating the game and just steamrolling the other team. So yeah, so I'm gonna put Glaceon in the bottom of the solid pick. I think I'm just gonna put him just right behind Venusaur for now. So next we have Sylveon, and Sylveon is actually gonna be swapping places with Glaceon. So I had Sylveon in the solid tier last week, but it's just a Pokemon that, I mean, one week you feel it's doing really well. The next week you're kind of wondering, is it tanky enough? Right now we're currently in the position where, like, yes, you're able to get the damage off. You can survive a couple all-ins that a lot of these other attackers won't survive. But we still are getting to the problem where if the Zacian jumps on you, if the Gyarados jumps on you and decides to all-in you, you really don't have a chance as an attacker. You 100% are going to need a support or a defender to back you up in that situation. There's some Pokemon like Greninja, Espeon maybe, who can actually win that 1v1 with the Gyarados depending on how the game's going. But a Pokemon like Sylveon, unless it's really fed, it's really ahead, it's not beating the Aegislash, for instance, in the 1v1. It has too much lockdown, and it negates too much of what Sylveon is trying to do, sadly. So yeah, Sylveon gonna have to move down to the not bad for this week. Next, we're gonna have the Yellow Rat Pikachu, and it does kind of pain me to say this. I'm not a big fan of Pikachu. I know Pikachu's been there since day one. Yeah, it's Pikachu, but you know, I've never been fond of the Yellow Rat, and I've kind of had him in the not bad tier since the beginning, and I think it is time to move him up to the solid pick tier. There is very little zoning like how a Pikachu can zone you. Having the point and click moveset is so oppressive. It can shut down so many different Pokemon. Pikachu's definitely a great attacker pick, even a really great support pick if you kind of want a more damage heavy support. Just put on EXP share on Pikachu and you'll get by perfectly. And you know, using the Unite move in the Rayquaza pit, there's so many times where you can just steal the Rayquaza because of the continuous damage you're putting out. Putting Thunderbolt even on a Rayquaza, you know, because it has that continuous damage. It's just so good at getting these secures when there's a hectic team fight around and it's hard to kind of focus on one thing. So next we're going to have Armarouge, and Armarouge is a Pokemon that I've kind of neglected a little bit. He has actually shot up in the win rate, so you can see over here that he is the third highest win rate right now at 52%, so 1.22% increase from the last week. That's fairly good, and I can definitely see how his playstyle is complementing currently the meta right now. All-rounders, again, very dive heavy, but Armarouge does do well against dives. He's kind of the attacker they've introduced to do well against being dived with his short range and his shields and his increase in defense and special defense. So he's a Pokemon that I think deserves to be perhaps maybe just at the top of the not bad tier. He's still a Pokemon who's not too intuitive on how he works. Many attackers do work fairly similar to each other, although you do have your outliers, and Armarouge does tend to be one of those outliers. So now that leaves us with 2 more Pokemon, and only one can be in our must play for this week. I go back and forth a couple times on whether I think Dragapult's the best in the game, whether I think he's the second best, and right now I'm having to lean towards he being not the must play, but somewhere actually still under Alolan Raichu. I mean, if you watch any of my streams, I'm a Dragapult main, and I love playing this character. However, I do realize that he's not for everybody. There's a lot of people that don't find success on Dragapult, and he's weird with his positioning, and he's also a 3-stage Pokemon that needs to farm up pretty much till level 9 before you can start doing any work. So if you're able to shut down Dragapult fairly early, it's going to be very, very impactful for him. So being able to be so far away from the team fights can actually put you in a lot better positioning, especially when it comes to the last Rayquaza fight, because you can be almost in a completely separate bush, very close to your own goal zone, and still get some snipe shots off if you're going that moveset with Inteleon. And if it calls for it, you can actually still go Liquidation if there isn't, such a dive heavy presence on their team, and you're still going to be doing massive amounts of damage. Now, the problem with essentially all attackers is that they do, on some degree, rely on peel, rely on their supports, their defenders. And so, yes, Inteleon has the same problem as all attackers, where if, you're getting backdoored, if the Speedster is able to make their way around the map and flank you from the back, and you don't have no Wigglytuff or anything to help them get off of you, you're gonna have a bad time. So because it's a problem for essentially all attackers, that's why I do feel comfortable putting Inteleon at the top for the attackers for this week. It is also to note that Alolan Raichu is, I would say, could be arguably a better attacker, a more versatile attacker at least. However, it is still a Pokemon that's going to have a 40% ban rate. So if you're going to be playing in draft pick, that's almost half of the games Alolan Raichu is going to be banned in, just statistically. So again, not the most recommended pickup for those reasons. If in the future the ban rate goes down and there's more of an opportunity to start playing Alolan Raichu, I can definitely see it becoming the must-play attacker. Okay, so moving on, we have the all-rounders, and to be the best all-rounder, it's actually a very tough competition right now. And there's some Pokemon that I feel have not actually been performing that well, and mainly due to the fact that they still are a 3-stage evolution. Despite the dominance in the late game, having a Dragonair, a Pupitar, a Gabite for, 5 minutes of the game, it can be so detrimental for everything essentially. Again, don't get me wrong, Pokemon like Dragonite are super hard carries if they get ahead and for, the end of the game. But again, just the fact that you can have all your goal zones down because the other team keeps on forcing 5-man initiations, knowing that you're going to be kind of fighting odd man. Dragonite won't be as strong until like the 5-minute mark. Like, they'll keep on hounding your team and getting almost like 400 points before you can even get a foot in the game. And not only could that be so demoralizing for the whole team, but like just costing, right? Just completely cost the game. You might lose by 20 points at the end because it just took so long to get these guys going, sadly. So I think that Dragonite's still a very, very solid pick. However, the fact that it evolves 3 times, I think it's gonna actually put it under Scyther and Scizor. I think that right now, getting that early game dominance to swing the game in your favor, as well as being able to fight so well in the Rayquaza pit, those 2 factors are so important in the meta right now. Dragonite is kind of falling short when we're comparing to Scizor and Scyther. Tyranitar, as I was just saying, I think is also going to drop, so I had Tyranitar around at the top of the not bad tier. However, I think I am going to put him at the bottom. It just hasn't been performing. Pupitar is, I think, the longest evolution stage you're going to be waiting on, and that is going to take forever sometimes. It is terrible to sit through. And then Garchomp I had right next to Dragonite, and again, same problems, so I definitely think it's going to be around with the other 3-stage all-rounders. There's definitely a benefit to all-rounders that only evolved once or have no evolutions right now. That does leave us 2 more, Blaziken and Serena. And Serena's interesting to me. Serena is a Pokemon that you can see do very good and also see do very bad, but is not played that much. Could always be more Serenas in the game. And Serena's not a bad Pokemon at the end of the day, right? Serena's actually a pretty good Pokemon, a really oppressive lane bully. If you're able to get those 6 attack weight stacks up, I mean, good luck in that lane now. You're not gonna have a good time at all. And I've had Serena kind of at the top of the not bad tier for a couple weeks now, and I think it is time to put Serena at the bottom of the solid pick. I think it's just making the cut over there. Very good lockdown. The Unite move is extremely good for kind of getting that KO while being untargetable. And with all the dashes and speed buffs you have a really good chance of just kind of disengaging right after that, or disengaging then re-engaging a couple seconds later. Also, an extremely good Pokemon to pair with Comfey if you're ever going to be doing the Comfey support strategy. Definitely a recommendation there. So that does leave us though with Blaziken, once again going to be at our must-play tier for the 2nd week in a row. So, or maybe the 3rd week in a row actually. Blaziken, if you just go to the win rate, I mean, top win rate in the game, right? 54%. That's a crazy win rate to have. It is definitely a Pokemon that's going to get nerfed in some capacity in the future. I definitely recommend getting your Blaziken games in right now. I do expect a nerf on Blaziken in about 2 weeks. The win rate is just way too high for Pokemon Unite standards. They're definitely looking at it right now and thinking about how are we gonna, knock it down a couple pegs. So watch out for that in the future. So next we have the Speedsters, and we'll start with Gengar. Gengar is a Pokemon that I just don't think stood up to these other Speedsters. I know Gengar has a lot of potential, however, it is a very telegraphed Pokemon. Against higher play, just seeing those Hypnosis or Sludge Bombs, seeing those coming is honestly fairly easy to telegraph. And unless you're already in the middle of a team fight and he chooses to engage, which not many Gengars do, but it's something that you should be doing as a Gengar, you know, just kind of feeling out the situation before engaging, not being the initiator. That's the problem with a lot of the Gengars right now. Anyways, Gengar definitely does have its niche appearances. It can definitely be played at a very high level still. However, it is not reflecting too much on the player base. So I think I'm kind of going back and forth and putting on the not bad and maybe don't play. I think we'll still keep it actually at the maybe don't play. Maybe we'll put it above Zoroark and Zeraora, just because simply because it's a special attacking Pokemon, and right now the meta is just so attack heavy, so a lot of people are gonna be kind of doing like Rocky Helmet or other physical defending items to kind of counter that, and kind of leaving that special defense gap open, which, you know, Pokemon like Gengar, Pokemon like Darkrai are able to abuse fairly nicely right now in this meta. So next, we're going to talk about Dodrio, who I believe has earned his right into the solid pick tier. I did have him at the top of not bad tier, kind of fluctuating in the bottom tier, but Dodrio has been fairly consistent at having a 50% win rate right now. Currently at a 51.8% win rate, which is pretty average. Again, you know, when Amulet Coin came out, I already knew, man. I go to the video and see. I already knew that, you know, either the item's gonna be nerfed or Dodrio was gonna be nerfed before the item came out. Dodrio's a very good Pokemon right now, and any slight tweaks to even items that Dodrio uses could easily send it to possibly the best Speedster. So a Pokemon that definitely has to have a close eye on right now, and honestly it might be worth, you know, learning this Pokemon. Not easy Pokemon to learn, not your typical Speedster, or even just not your typical Pokemon. Very like lockdown heavy, very backdoor heavy, which does require knowing when to backdoor, when to do your lockdown, and when to not, and like, you know, when to group up with your team or just, you know, be in the jungle. So a lot of awareness goes into this character, but it does pay off. Next, we're gonna have Absol, and Absol has gone back to disappointing me. So as soon as the penetration nerf happened, I put Absol in the last place position. And then after hearing some opinions, playing some games against and as Absol, I started to see, you know, maybe there's something here. Maybe there is still something here. But then over the last few weeks, I stopped seeing it. I just completely stopped seeing whatever I was seeing previously with Absol. It's gone. It's just completely gone. And I think he just tumbled down very quickly to this last place position, no doubt about it. When we just comparing to any other Speedster right now, I am back to wondering why you played Absol and not someone like Leafeon, not someone like Zoroark, right? They got better lockdown, they're faster across the map, they got more dashes. Absol is so telegraphed, and yeah, you can catch someone kind of lacking, kind of sleeping, but don't expect that to happen every single game. And yeah, Absol, I think, de facto last place. So that does leave us with two more. And Meowscarada has gotten usurped by Talonflame once again. And again, I said this in one of my previous videos, these Speedsters are gonna be moving quick, fast. There's one day, 1 week, it'll have this guy is the best Speedster. The next week, this guy will be the next Speedster. So on, so forth. And that's exactly how it's played out. There's always some new strategies going on. And Bravebird Talonflame is just such a menace right now. There's something being said about, like, you know, waiting in the bush, waiting for your team to initiate, and then coming in with the Brave Bird. It is so detrimental to your attackers, and he is so fast that even Galarian Rapidash isn't able to get away from the lockdown that Talonflame has. Such a great Pokemon right now, and I think well deserving of the must-play tier. Also, bonus points is that it's one of those the early Pokemon you get in the game. So definitely a Pokemon I think everybody should at least try and learn. If not, just to know how to play against this Pokemon. You might be surprised by the amount of damage you're gonna have very, very early on in the game. So now we can move on to our defenders, and first we're gonna have Slowbro, who I think has moved down out of the not bad tier, skipping the maybe don't play tier, all the way into the last place. Yeah, Slowbro. I was just thinking about it, and like, these defenders for the most part are very, very good Pokemon in the game. The only ones I can say that are not the best would be Slowbro, Greedent, and Goodra. So when it comes to Goodra, I was not on board with it whatsoever. Ever since the nerfs to its damage, I thought it was just like kind of like a wet sponge. I played many games with and against Goodras, and I just saw a complete lack of really anything. We're kind of walking around aimless, trying to draw some opponents to them, but then getting melted almost immediately. And I've since played a few games with and against some Goodras who have really done a good job, really been able to survive with like their Dragon Pulse or Acid Spray, understanding when to use their moves and everything. And it did, kind of remind me that, it does come to the player a lot of the times when comparing some of these Pokemon. So Goodra may not be the easiest Pokemon to play right now. It seems his playstyle has become more narrowed, more specific. However, if you can hone in on that, you can indeed become that annoyance for the enemy team that just kind of stays alive too long, and you're backdooring points, so it's not like they can just ignore you forever, right? So I think Goodra does kind of move up, but I mean, maybe play Umbreon, right? Maybe you should play some Trevenant, right? Speaking of Trevenant Blastoise, who's going to be in the must-play? Any surprise? I'm putting Blastoise back up there. I left Trevenant out because I don't know, I wanted to put a little bit of suspense in this one, but I mean, it's really any surprise. I think Blastoise is just the best. I mean, don't get me wrong now, though. Trevenant is doing extremely well. You've been seeing a lot more Pain Split Trevenants, which gives it so much more survivability, and it's so good against these all-rounders right now. So Trevenant, I do think, is almost right on that doorstep of being one of the best defenders in the game. Used to be, I would say, de facto best defender in the game, but Blastoise has definitely taken that position ever since the special attack, the damage buffs Blastoise has. So, last but not least, we have our support tier, and I am going to start it off by putting Clefable at the bottom of the solid pick tier, and replacing that with Comfey to the bottom of the not bad tier. So Comfey is just too specific on having a dual Q. I mean, if you know exactly, the team you're going in with, you have someone who you was, going to guarantee carry you for the game, then yes, it's going to be your S tier pick, depending on the player. However, for the most part, in a solo queue setting, I mean, you can argue it's even last place, because who wants to be Comfey on Mandoms, right? That just sounds terrible just thinking about it, but I think I'm just going to have it at the middle of the road right now. And as for Clefable, buffs did it very nicely, and the meta right now, again, with dive heavy Pokemon, Gravity is becoming a very good move, and Clefable is a Pokemon right now where, there's 3 support bands. You have Psyduck, you have Blissey, and if your team is going to play one of those two Pokemon, then it's Clefable. So Clefable, I think, is a really solid runner-up for being the best support, which we also are going to just put Wigglytuff just right under Clefable for the solid pick. Wigglytuff, just such a good troll. It has an ability to just survive at 1 HP over and over again, and I don't understand it. But and I would love to hear if any other Wigglytuff mains have witnessed this amazing passive Wigglytuff has, where it seems it doesn't matter the situation you're in. You're always gonna get out with this tiniest sliver of HP, and go back to base and just pretend like nothing happened. So it's just for that alone, honestly, I think makes it a solid pick. Let alone the Sing, the rollout, right? The Unite move, shields. It's the fact that Wigglytuff is essentially just a tank. So, anyways, we do come down to our must-play pick, and Psyduck. Psyduck would love to be in the must-play tier. Psyduck is so good. Ever since the launch, Psyduck has been such an oppressive support. But the other side to that is, the double-edged sword to being a really good support is you just get banned over and over and over again. And still now, Psyduck has one of the highest ban rates in the game. It is not the highest ban support. That does go to Clefable now. However, it has been going up very steadily, almost at 40% now. Usually it hovers around 30, now it's gone up to 40. So it is getting less and less likely you're going to be playing that Psyduck, and because of that alone, Blissey goes right back up to our must play. Blissey is also just that support where if the other team has it, you may not be able to get all your KOs, right? The sprint, the free sprint that Blissey gets, helping hand, safeguard, is just such a shutdown on so many different Pokemon. Definitely a debate if you want to have on whether Blissey is more impactful than Psyduck. However, I don't think it's any question that because of Psyduck's high ban rate that we just can't put him in the top of the tier. So, this is week 6 of the Breath of Evolution tier list. Let me know your thoughts on this list. Are any Pokemon moved up too high? Any Pokemon that moved down too low? A lot of tweaking from the last week. There was a lot of changes in playstyle this last week. I found that really does complement some Pokemon a lot more than others. Inteleon, for example, having a attacker who can play in a very safe position while at the same time being able to get those confirms on, the buff objectives on the Rayquaza is very, very vital, and something that may shift within the next week or so because of the season reset. But there's only one. We'll see when it happens. So yeah, that's gonna be it for me. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back on Wednesday with another Pokemon Unite quiz. Have a great day, guys. Stay bricked.